What if I told you that one decision made in London could cripple a nation's war machine? That's exactly what happened when the UK imposed sanctions targeting Russia's vast oil production, a power play that sent shockwaves through the political and economic landscape. Russia, a juggernaut in the energy sector, has long been a vital supplier of oil and natural gas. With approximately 11% of the world's oil and a staggering 24.8 trillion cubic meters of natural gas, its energy giants, Rosneft and Lukoil, have thrived. In 2023 alone, Rosneft boasted a production of around 203.4 million tons, while Lukoil produced 81 million tons. These companies have been the backbone of Russia's economy, fueling its ambitions on the global stage. However, on October 15, the UK drew a line in the sand with the stroke of a pen. Adding 51 ships to their sanctions list, 44 of which belong to the shadowy underbelly of the Russian maritime economy, London targeted more than just oil. It aimed straight for the heart of Vladimir Putin's war funding. With Rosneft and Lukoil now restricted, the flow of nearly $2.5 billion in profits became a trickle. The response wasn't merely diplomatic, it declared an economic war. But the chilling truth behind these sanctions was not just the names on a list. The true target? A clandestine fleet of between 600 to 1,400 ships, operating in the shadows to transport oil under the radar. It was a pirate armada, a lifeline built in response to unprecedented Western sanctions following Putin's invasion of Ukraine. This fleet consisted of aging, rusting tankers, often over 2 decades old, and operating under flags of convenience from places like Liberia and Panama, designed to escape detection while delivering Russian crude oil to Asia. But this fleet was not just a backup, it was the lifeblood of Putin's military expenditures. In the haze of illicit trade, millions of dollars worth of oil were jockeyed dangerously between ships, navigating treacherous seas with the stakes running higher than ever. Each missile fired in Ukraine, every tank dispatched to the front lines, was financed by this shadow operation. The West had been biding its time, tracking this maritime game, and then came the UK, ready to strike. This was not merely a strike against ships but a decisive maneuver in a larger geopolitical chess match. It wasn't long before allies in the European Union, Denmark, and France joined the UK in this isolation game, confirming that the efforts to economically suffocate Russia were far from unilateral. The stage was set, and the stakes were enormous. The entire focus of the conflict shifted from the violent battleground of Ukraine to the quiet boardrooms of London, where deals defining nations were made. As the UK tightened its noose around the maritime operations with sanctions, the implications sunk deep into Russian waters. Without insurance, which was now prohibited for these shadow vessels, these ships could no longer risk their cargo or navigate through critical trade routes. The stranglehold was complete. Like a choke point in a river, the flow of Russia's oil revenues faced devastation. Tankers became stranded ghost ships, worth no more than scrap metal, drifting aimlessly at sea. The reality surged forth: without financial inflows, the Kremlin could falter. The possibility of civilian unrest grew with every immutable financial decree. Put simply, Putin's ability to sustain the war may soon dwindle. Could he devise a response quick enough to counter this economic onslaught? The answer lay in a murky series of options still swirling in uncertainty. Establishing a new fleet? Unlikely. Creating a homegrown insurance system? Patently ineffective. Turning to strategic allies like China and India? A gamble with uncertain returns. The potential for desperation grew. Could these sanctions shatter the Kremlin from within, leading to a devastating domino effect? Yet as we analyze where this narrative leads, one thing is clear: economic warfare has taken a predominant role in modern conflict, blending financial might with geopolitical strategy. Some battles are fought far from the front lines, in the quiet calculations of power brokers. And in this delicate dance, the true victor may emerge not on the battlefield, but in the bold decisions made in the offices of London. In a world where invisible battles are fought beneath the waves, an unholy alliance of ships thrived. This ragtag fleet, a ghostly armada of 600 to 1,400 decrepit vessels, was the foundation upon which Vladimir Putin sought to sustain his war machine. As sanctions rained down after his brutal invasion of Ukraine, the Kremlin's reliance on this shadow fleet became its lifeline, designed to deliver oil and maintain an economy on the brink of collapse. But what happens when an economic war erupts? As the United Kingdom stepped forward, declaring an all-out assault on the very essence of this shadowy operation, the battlefield shifted. London's sanctions against Russia's largest oil companies were not merely punitive, they targeted the heart of Putin's notorious secret. This was no benign action, it was an orchestrated strike, sending shockwaves from the EU and Brussels to the strategic heart of Denmark and France. The terror for Russia lay not just in the names added to the sanction lists, but in the crippling realization of their economic strategy being unraveled. This shadow fleet, a reckless collection of rusty tankers, many older than 20, registered under flags of convenience like Liberia and Panama, had one mission: evade detection and transport oil across oceans. Each transaction was the lifeblood pour into Putin's war chest, enabling attacks that devastated countless lives in Ukraine. Imagine the roars of tempestuous waves crashing against weathered hulls while crew members hurriedly transfer millions of dollars worth of crude oil in a silent dance, all orchestrated under the cover of darkness. These vessels became phantoms on the high seas, navigating stormy waters fraught with danger, all for a corrupt regime's ambitions. Yet, in a twist of fate, the audacious plans of the Kremlin faced a coordinated front from the West. As the United Kingdom tightened its grip, questions arose about the implications of dismantling this nefarious fleet. What would happen if the very mechanism fueling the war was brought crashing down? Would the echo of this collapse resonate through the Kremlin, shattering Putin's power base and sending shockwaves through Russia's economy? The stage was set for a dramatic unfolding. The United Kingdom's strategic decisions were not solitary acts. They were part of a larger tapestry woven through European solidarity, aiming to corner and compromise the Russian regime in international waters. This wasn't merely about shipping routes, it was about dismantling an empire built on the treacherous sands of unsustainable practices. Now, the Shadow Fleet faced relentless scrutiny. With the United Kingdom leading the charge, Europe glimpsed an opportunity to strike at the very foundation of the Putin regime. Each ghost ship, carrying its threadbare canvas of dreams, now faced challenges that could paralyze their operations. It was time to ask, could this be the turning point the world was waiting for? In response to soaring energy demands, a secretive operation was unfolding on the turbulent waters. Vessels were slyly transferring tens of millions of dollars worth of crude oil between ships, navigating stormy seas toward undisclosed ports in China, India, and beyond. This vast, illicit trade was a financial lifeline for Vladimir Putin, pouring billions into his military ambitions every month. But now, a turning point was nearing. The West, observing this shadowy game, decided to strike back aggressively. Underestimating the consequences of his actions, Putin had unintentionally shifted the battlefield from Ukraine's muddy trenches to the financial corridors of London. What truly makes the United Kingdom's strategy lethal is not merely the might of naval forces, but the iron grip of British law on global shipping. Maneuvering an oil tanker is nothing like steering a car. It involves insuring a cargo valued in the hundreds of millions against potential disasters. For centuries, the bustling heart of global maritime insurance has been Lloyd's of London, the organization through which more than 90% of the world's shipping is insured. The recent sanctions from London are not just mundane regulations aimed at traders, they directly sever the financial lifeline of the Shadow Fleet. The UK has prohibited insurance for any vessel linked to this fleet, its owners, or any associated intermediaries. This move transcends a mere technicality, it represents a death knell. An uninsured tanker becomes a pariah on the high seas. No reputable port would allow such vessels to dock. Fearing disastrous environmental repercussions, they would be barred from traversing key maritime routes like the Suez Canal or the Strait of Malacca. This decisive action has rendered Putin's once numerous fleet of ghost ships little more than a collection of rusting shells, powerless and adrift. The UK's measures aim not just at freezing assets of Rosneft and Lukoil in London, they are poised to dismantle the entire international operations of these titans of Russian energy. As the effects of these constraints ripple outward, one must ponder, how long can the Kremlin endure this tightening vice? Will the funds to sustain military operations continue to dwindle? Can Russia's economy withstand such a barrage from the West? The answers lie on the precipice of impending disaster. In a dramatic shift in the ongoing conflict, the shadows of Russia's maritime operations are now cast into doubt. A joint international initiative has targeted the backbone of Vladimir Putin's war funding, the notorious Shadow Fleet. This clandestine armada, a vast network of ships designed to transport Russian oil in defiance of sanctions, is facing unprecedented scrutiny and action. The recent sanctions were not merely punitive gestures, they were calculated moves in a strategic game intended to economically dismantle the Kremlin's power. The United Kingdom's sanctions against Russia were merely the opening volley in a broader offensive. This was not just about freezing assets, it was a concerted effort to incapacitate Russia's oil production capabilities on an international scale. President Emmanuel Macron of France entered the fray quickly, urging the European Union to follow suit with a similar ban on these shadow vessels. The impact of this alliance was palpable, as it became increasingly evident that this coordinated action aimed to strangle Russia's global oil trade. Denmark's role proved to be just as crucial. Nestled in the heart of Europe, the Danish Straits serve as a vital route for tankers leaving Russia's primary oil ports. By tightening control over these waters, citing environmental risks and adherence to new sanctions, Denmark effectively transformed a legislative measure into a physical blockade. These actions sent shivers through Moscow, signaling that the oil export routes were now under a chokehold. As the EU reinforced its stance, the broader ramifications of this chess game became clear. These sanctions were no simple regulatory hurdles, they struck deep into the economic core of Russia. This legislation aimed to initiate a domino effect that could unravel the foundations of the current regime. With the continuous flow of revenue from oil sales disrupted, the fear loomed of civilian unrest within Russia, as financial strains tightened on everyday people. How much longer can Putin sustain his war machine when the lifeblood of his economy, the oil revenue, faces extinction? As the situation escalates, the stakes become horrifyingly clear. If Russia's economic lifeline is severed, could this lead to catastrophic repercussions at home? A deeper unraveling is inevitable, and the question that looms large is, what will be the tipping point that leads to Putin's downfall? The repercussions of this high-stakes economic confrontation could lead to the collapse of everything the Kremlin has built over the years. The war, it seems, is shifting from the battlefield to boardrooms and bureaucracies, offering a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. The unfolding saga of the Russo-Ukrainian conflict has escalated to extraordinary heights, with the balance of power shifting dramatically. The UK has taken an audacious step by introducing sweeping sanctions targeting Russia's energy giants, a strategic strike aimed at choking the lifeblood of Putin's war machine. This maneuver is not merely a diplomatic rebuke but a full-on economic assault, crafted to shatter the foundations of the Kremlin's power. As Ukraine inflicts damage on Russian refineries, the ramifications ripple through Russian society. A shortage of gasoline could catalyze widespread panic among civilians, leading to the disintegration of society. Imagine the cold dread of families watching their livelihoods evaporate, unable to afford the very essentials for life's daily grind. What happens when soldiers' salaries, pensions, and social assistance vanish into thin air? Suddenly, the Kremlin's long-held belief in financial endurance falters, revealing a poignant reality: the walls are closing in. Now, what options does Putin have left in this all-out economic war? The first pitfall is the possibility of revitalizing a shadow fleet. This would not only be expensive but could take months or years to establish. Even then, it would face the same barriers of insurance and port restrictions, a futile endeavor. Next, there's the idea of creating a national insurance system. Moscow has toyed with this concept, but reality bites. A policy from a Russian company holds no weight on the international stage. Suez Canal Authority or ports in China won't gamble their reputations on the Kremlin's hollow assurances, knowing the wreckage that follows a disaster. Lastly, there's the fraught option of seeking assistance from nations like China or India. However, these countries are no one's allies. They stand ready to exploit Russia's precarious situation, likely offering to buy oil at rock-bottom prices, all while trying to maintain their own stability and avoid secondary sanctions. Putin finds himself in an enclosed labyrinth, bereft of rational solutions amid this economic chokehold. He faces only one dire path: intensifying the conflict in Ukraine or resorting to nuclear threats. Yet even such extreme measures come at a steep cost, one that transcends military might. The cumulative effect of Western strategy against Russia is a masterpiece of economic warfare. The well-coordinated sanctions, spearheaded by the UK, are like a carefully crafted dagger aimed at the very heart of Putin's regime. The questions linger: will this unravel Putin's grip on power? Is there enough strength left in the Kremlin to withstand this relentless storm? In this transformative era of warfare, let's not forget that the fate of nations is no longer solely decided by the roar of engines or the weight of steel. It pivots on balance sheets and the merciless grip of the financial system. Perhaps history will remember this moment as the turning point when the Kremlin's fortunes shattered under the weight of its own hubris. The story continues, as does the uncertainty of what tomorrow may bring. A momentous decision made from London has sent shockwaves through Russia's economic machinery, altering the entire battlefield. This was not just a symbolic act, it was a concerted effort to seal Russia's fate, ensuring Ukraine's victory. In today's warfare, triumph isn't solely about tanks. The battles are fought with balance sheets, insurance policies, and the control of critical shipping lanes. Vladimir Putin seems to have overlooked this reality, finding his coffers nearly drained. For him, the phrase, "the game is over," isn't merely a setback, it signifies impending ruin not just in financial markets, but in the very core of Russia's energy-dependent economy. Picture the Russian engineers, standing in the chilling wind of Siberia, surrounded by the lifeblood of their industry, oil wells, patiently waiting for operational tankers. That decisive signature from London marked not just a financial defeat but has irrevocably harmed the arteries of Russia's industrial heart. It's a tale of a nation teetering on the edge, suffocating in a deluge of its own oil, unable to navigate through the storm it has created. Putin and his advisors had once dismissed sanctions as mere financial hurdles to overcome, believing they could navigate around them by offering discounts, trading in yuan or rupees. Yet they failed to grasp a crucial truth: oil is a tangible commodity, not a numerical digit on a screen. It has substance, weight, and essentially, it must flow freely to sustain the system. Without that flow, everything collapses. The blockade of insurance initiated by the United Kingdom, backed by allies in the European Union and Denmark, was meticulously crafted to incite this catastrophic collapse. Let's dissect this impending tragedy step by step. When an oil tanker affiliated with the Shadow Fleet is blacklisted by Lloyd's of London, it loses its critical insurance. An uninsured vessel cannot navigate the crucial Danish Straits and, subsequently, cannot approach the important oil terminals of Ust Luga and Primorsk on the Baltic Sea. As this chain reaction sets in motion, ominous implications unfold. The enormous storage facilities jolting towards their limit will soon spell disaster. If tankers cannot reach them, the vast reserves of oil will become a steel trap, sealing the fate of not only the exports but also the very survival of the regime. Tensions within Russia will undoubtedly escalate, and civilian unrest may rear its head as the ramifications of this economic warfare begin to percolate. The intricate weave of oil and economy, once a driving force for empire, now teeters on the brink of disarray, as each moment brings the collapse closer. Can Putin find a way out of this pressure cooker? The options before him are dwindling. One avenue might involve creating a new fleet, but such a response could take years to realize and would still face insurmountable barriers from the West. Is it time to pivot and seek new allies in places like China or India? These nations, while seemingly supportive, are pragmatic and likely to exploit Russia's desperation rather than rescue it. The real question is whether Putin truly understands the stakes. In this dire scenario, every moment lost could lead to greater chaos back home. The walls are closing in, and the once mighty Russian Shadow Fleet now risks becoming naught but rusting relics adrift in stormy waters. On a fateful day, a bold move by the United Kingdom, backed by the European Union and Denmark, set in motion a catastrophic chain reaction for Russia's oil empire. Imagine this: Lloyd's of London put several of Russia's Shadow Fleet tankers on their blacklist. The moment that happened, these ships lost their insurance. But why does that matter? An uninsured vessel faces immediate doom: it cannot pass through the crucial Danish Straits. With the chokehold tightening, Vladimir Putin now finds himself in an impossible situation. Picture the colossal terminals at Ust Luga and Primorsk, glistening like beacons of oil, filling up with precious fuel. As the tanks brim with crude, the countdown begins. These vast reservoirs reach capacity in mere hours, triggering a crisis that ripples through Russia's oil pipeline systems. When the valves of Transneft, Russia's principal oil operator, start to slow down the flow, a chain reaction ignites. Refineries in Russia's heartland, Kurishi, Ryazan, and Yaroslavl, grind to a halt. They can no longer ship the diesel and gasoline they produce, leaving crude oil stranded in the pipelines. The consequences are dire. The wells deep in the frozen ground of western Siberia, which feed this entire operation, must also cease production. But halting an oil well isn't simply a matter of flipping a switch. In temperatures plummeting to -40 degrees, crude oil can freeze, turning into solid wax that clogs the vast kilometers of pipelines like arteries filled with plaque. The ramifications are frightening: restoring operations becomes atrociously complicated, frequently requiring costly investments that could take months or even years. In a stunning twist, the UK's simple act, a mere financial signature, freezes wells vital to Putin's military machine from thousands of miles away. This is a masterstroke of strategic warfare. Russia's once imposing energy resources are now an Achilles heel, morphing into its worst nightmare. As the clock ticks down, the fate of a nation hangs precariously by a thread, presenting a horrifying question: can Putin recover from such devastation without resorting to desperate measures? Vladimir Putin stands at a crucial crossroads, trapped like a hunted animal with nowhere to run. A cunning strategy is in place, designed to turn Russia's most powerful asset, its vast energy resources, into its gravest vulnerability. The delicate balance of power hangs in the air, thick with tension. If the Danish authorities decree that uninsured vessels cannot pass, the implications become devastating. Here lies Putin's first option: economic surrender. He could throttle back oil production, a move that would seal his fate, cutting the lifeline of currency flow that fuels his war. Slowing the pumps means starvation for the economy, leading to mass unrest within weeks. But colossal enterprises like Rosneft and Lukoil would tip into bankruptcy, shedding millions of jobs in the far-flung oil fields of Siberia. It's not merely a relinquishment, but an explosive collapse, reminiscent of a dam bursting. Yet, there exists a second path, the path of military folly. This option resonates with Putin's aggressive persona, propelling him to defy the Finnish blockade. Picture this: a Staraguchi-class corvette leading an uninsured vessel, a shadow fleet tanker, against the odds. NATO has predicted this very move, and it could spell doom for Russian aspirations. As the corvette breaches Danish waters, it won't find mere patrol boats but a formidable wall of Allied forces ready to respond. The sky above will churn with the roar of F-35 jets and Swedish Gripens, while missile batteries sit poised along the Norwegian coastline, their silence as lethal as the weapons they carry. The USS Gerald Ford. An immense aircraft carrier looms ominously, orchestrating operations from just above the cold, grey North Sea. The moment the corvette steels itself to enter the fray, it sets the stage for an epic clash, one that could reshape not only the Baltic front but also the future of Putin's regime. What decision will the Kremlin leader make? Will he yield and retreat, surrendering everything he's built? Or will he escalate, igniting a conflict that might spiral out of control? The stakes couldn't be higher, as the whispers of war echo louder, plunging the world into uncertainty. In this dire chess match, has Putin already lost before he even moves? In the heart of geopolitical struggle, a single financial decree sent ripples across the globe. It transformed Russia's rich oil reserves, once a symbol of power, into the Achilles heel of Vladimir Putin's regime. With an impulsive stroke of a pen in London, hundreds of oil rigs fueling a war machine became dormant. Faced with an irreversible disaster, Putin was caught in a sinister dilemma: economic collapse or military escalation. Imagine a relentless storm brewing over the icy Baltic Sea. Russian forces consider a desperate bid to break through the encircling blockade, relying on their dwindling naval power. But this destructive decision risks plunging them into an all-out conflict with NATO. The Danish authorities, standing firmly by international law, announce a bold ultimatum: uninsured tankers will be denied passage. Picture the tension rising as a Russian commander finds his path blocked by not just Danish patrol boats, but also F-35s soaring from Polish bases and Swedish jets ready for action. High above, the USS Gerald Ford aircraft carrier looms, orchestrating a monumental standoff. What will he do? Retreat in humiliation, confirming the blockade, or initiate fire against NATO? If he retreats, Putin's bluff is revealed, a political gamble gone wrong. Should he choose aggression, he risks triggering Article 5 of NATO, an act that could obliterate the remaining Russian fleet in moments. This is not just a game, it's a potential catastrophe. Both choices echo with defeat: economic self-destruction or an ill-advised military clash. Putin finds himself paralyzed. Like pipelines frozen under a thick layer of ice. The UK's strategic sanctions have severed funding, placing him in a quagmire. A fragile economic lifeline is pulled away, leading to a complete and utter breakdown. London's financial edict has the power to stifle oil wells thousands of miles away, illustrating the intricate web of modern economic warfare. As drone attacks from Ukraine effectively cripple domestic demand by targeting refineries, the West's blockade decimates foreign sales. Now, the once mighty Russian oil industry has become a burden rather than a boon. Putin's revelation is stark: the very weapon he wielded for aggression now looms perilously close, pointed at his own temple, with impending disaster lurking on the horizon. This escalation marks not just a turning point in the war, but a dual threat. The cracks in Russia's facade could transform into a chasm. What will be the ultimate fate of the Kremlin? With tensions rising and strategies crumbling, a reckoning looms.